All right, good evening. My name is Nicole Winans with the Fairfax County Department of Transportation, and I want to welcome you to this meeting to discuss the 2024 repaving in the Mount Vernon and Franconia districts. Before we begin, I'd like to review some guidelines so everyone can participate and get the most out of the session. Please note this meeting is recorded and will be posted on YouTube, then linked to the project webpage. Microsoft Teams does offer a live captioning service. You can find that by clicking the three dots on top of your screen and choosing Turn on Live Captions. Once the presentation is completed, we will begin the question and answer portion, during which participants will ask the questions aloud. The chat feature has been disabled for this meeting, so we will not be taking written questions. If you're on the phone, please hold your questions to the end. We will have instructions on how to ask questions at the conclusion of the presentation. We also encourage you to submit your comments to today's meeting using the online survey, online feedback form, or phone call. Again, we'll have addresses for you at the end of the presentation. Before we begin, I'd like to introduce Supervisor Lusk and Aaron Campbell from the Franconia District, and Peyton Smith from the Mount Vernon District. And I'm not sure if Supervisor Stork has arrived yet.
It'll just be me from the Mount Vernon District tonight.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Peyton. Supervisor Lusk, would you like to make opening remarks before we begin?
Just very quickly, I'll thank everyone for joining this discussion on the repaving for the Mount Vernon and Franconia districts. It's a great opportunity for you to hear what is being proposed and for you to ask any questions that you might have. And we just want you to know if there are other questions and if we can be of assistance in our respective offices, certainly feel free to reach out to myself in the Franconia district, and you can reach out to Supervisor Stork in the Mount Vernon district. So thank you very much for being a part of this meeting this evening.
Thank you so much. Now I would like to introduce our first presenter from the Virginia Department of Transportation, Huda Ali, who is the Assistant Transportation and Land Use Director for Southern Fairfax County. And next I will introduce our other presenter, Zach Desjardins, who is Transportation Planner 3 with the Fairfax County Department of Transportation's Active Transportation Section. Huda from VDOT will begin with a presentation on VDOT's repaving program. Afterwards, Zach from FCDOT will present slides on FCDOT's proposed restriping projects as part of the 2024 repaving program. This will include any crosswalk or bike lanes FCDOT is proposing to add through the 2024 repaving program. With that, I turn it over to Huda.
Thank you, Nicole. Good evening, everyone. I will be presenting the VDOT paving program tonight, starting with the slides. Do you all see the slides on the screen?
Yes.
Okay. So on the agenda tonight, we'll be speaking about the state lane mile inventory and lane mile inventory for the Nova district. The planning and construction is part of the paving schedule. We will also cover the process for how roads get selected for repaving and how the pavement condition is determined using the CCI rating system. We'll present information about the dashboard and the pavement condition targets for this year and the various type of pavement treatments, and speaking about this year's budget as well, and the different types of pavement marking and striping before we transition to the county's presentation on the topic. As you can see here, Nova District has over 14,000 lane miles. To put this in perspective, it is the equivalent to going to the West Coast and back 2.5 times. The actual number might be higher than what this slide shows because it does not include the lane mileage for RAMs and the recently added roads. Moving to next slide. This slide shows the breakdown of lane miles for our district. As you can see, over half are in Fairfax County alone. The other half is almost a 50-50 split between Loudoun County and Prince William County, with only 2% in Arlington County, where VDOT maintains only interstate and primary roads, and the county maintains their own secondary roads. The construction aspect of the paving is seasonal, and it takes place during the warmer weather months from spring to summer to early fall. However, the planning process for paving is a year-round process. The process starts in spring going into summer with data collection for the next season. Over the summer into fall, we start analyzing the data, determine how much need is there compared to available funds, and prepare schedules and coordinate with central office. Then in winter, we close out the contracts, put out new contracts for bids, award and execute the new contracts by early year February into March. How our roads get selected for paving? This is a question we get quite often. VDOT identifies roadways which are selected for paving by using the Critical Condition Index CCI system. It's a rating system that ranges from 0 for very poor to 100 for excellent condition. This process is generally data-driven and based on several factors. As mentioned, pavement condition based on Current Condition Index CCI ratings is the first and the major factor. And then we also consider traffic volumes, avoiding locations in conflict with upcoming VDOT and locality projects, avoiding locations where underground utilities projects are planned, and grouping projects for economies of scale. And what that means is we consider entire neighborhoods when we have a main street within the neighborhood selected for paving to achieve efficiency in contractor mobilization. We also receive feedback from our maintenance crews who are most familiar with the roads in their areas. The planning process starts with collecting the data. We have contracts that drive the roads using high-tech vans, which can automatically analyze the detected pavement condition in terms of distress, texture, or roughness, using GPS cameras and scanners to measure things like crack size and distance between cracks and others to determine the pavement condition. The frequency of data collection depends on the type of roadway. Data is collected annually for interstate primaries and high volume secondaries, the ones that with average annual daily traffic higher than 3,500 vehicles per day. For low volume secondary roads below 3,500 vehicles per day, those with route numbers of 600 or higher and make the majority of the mile inventory, including residential streets, we do 20% every year, with the goal to cover the full lane mile inventory every 5 years. This lower frequency is because of the higher mileage and limited resources. Once the pavement condition data is collected and analyzed, it gets into a rating on a scale from 0 being worst to 100 being the best, like in the case of a new road. The rating system we use, called CCI, which stands for Critical Condition Index. We focus on very poor and poor roads with sufficiency ratings below 60 CCI. We do not pave or repave roads with ratings higher than 60 CCI. The pavement condition targets are decided based on the types of roads. The targets for 2023 are shown in green in the square at the bottom. For interstate, high volume primaries and high volume secondaries, our goal is to have 82% of the network at 60 CCI rating or above. For low volume secondary, low volume primary, we have a target of 75%. For low volume secondary roads, we have a lower target of 60%. And this data is generally used to inform budget decisions. On these slides, you see a screen capture of the VDOT pavement condition maps for 2023. In general, there are different types of pavement treatments with two major ones. There is preventive maintenance, where we try to extend the life of the pavement by applying slurry seal. We also do limited patching and crack seal. Candidate roads are typically not in poor condition and have a CCI rating above 60. The second type is corrective maintenance, and where we do the mill and overlay. 2-inch is most common and up to 4-inch depending on the road condition. This treatment is the most common and targets roads in poor condition. And the majority of the roads actually falls into this category, as we do 90% of the budget goes under this type of treatment. In rare occasions, we may have to replace the pavement to full depths and rebuild the road. Roads targeted with this treatment are typically very old and were built to old standards. Each year, our district receives a set amount of budget. The emphasis for this year are, as you can see from the bottom row in red, this year's budget is slightly higher than last year. You could also notice there are shifts of funds towards interstate and primaries while still providing a healthy budget towards secondaries compared to last year's, which also correlates to the 2023 pavement conditions. It's also worth noting that while the budget increased this year, there is a downtrend in lane miles paved and an upward trend in costs per lane mile. And these are due to the inflationary pressures. And what that means is we are not able to pave as much as we did in prior years because of the inflation. Our VDOT infrastructure and maintenance teams have determined that about 43% of our low volume secondary roads have combined critical condition index CCI ratings in the 30s and 40s, indicating very poor condition and are due for repaving. At the current funding levels, we pave about 6% of the road network each year. And the NOVA district continues to work diligently to catch up on paving roads across Northern Virginia until the roads are ultimately repaved. Our VDOT staff continues to monitor for emergency and safety-related issues such as potholes and needed patching. On these slides, we wanted to note that the available resources for the public, where they can go online and access this map to learn if the road is getting paved this year and can also track progress as well. This year's paving plan is now available for public access. It shows the roads planned for repaving in red. As the repaving season progresses, you will start seeing the different colors on the legend start appearing. This is an interactive map where you can enter your address in the search function to find out if your street is being repaved this year. If you click on the colored line on the road, a box will pop up, and when you can click the arrow, you could see the direct contact information for the VDOT construction manager in charge of the project with his name, email, and phone number. All will be listed. And he can be contacted directly for additional question and tracking the progress. VDOT tried to take advantage of the repaving program to implement road striping in ways that will enhance public safety and operation. We strive most commonly to replace the in-kind, as in put back what was existing before we mill and repave. We may occasionally improve traffic conditions by extending a turn lane, for example. We also take the repaving opportunity and collaborate with the county to implement new marking patterns to reduce the width of travel lanes, to enhance on-road bike routes, and to add new crosswalks to improve pedestrian safety. This last slide contains some helpful information on how to report a road problem. With that, I end my presentation. Thank you for the opportunity to speak about the state program, and I'll turn it back to Nicole and Zach. Thank you.
Thank you, Huda. The VDOT staff do really work very hard to make dollar go as far as they can in this program. And we're delighted to present to you a couple different options for the Franconia district and the Mount Vernon district. So typically, I'll explain briefly kind of what our proposed striping modifications are. So as Huda mentioned, VDOT and FCDOT collaborate to improve traffic safety. We will review a draft repaving plan. We'll identify opportunities for improvements, usually crosswalks and bike lanes, but sometimes some of these other things like shoulders and bus stop relocations. VDOT will develop the striping plans and the signing plans and coordinate implementation with the contractors, the hard work of repaving your street. Fairfax County leads the public engagement. That's why we're here tonight, as well as coordination with the supervisors. In addition, VDOT will identify and reconstruct substandard curb ramps to improve accessibility. And once the repaving is done, Fairfax County will come in and install the signage that you see along the for roads that have gotten bike lanes or new crosswalks. So as I mentioned, we look for crosswalks or potential crosswalk locations. We study busy pedestrian crossings that don't have crosswalk markings to determine if it meets the VDOT warrant, or essentially the requirements to mark them, and see if there are any parking restrictions that are needed to improve visibility of people using the crosswalk to drivers and the ability for them to see drivers. VDOT has done a great job in recent years of upgrading existing crosswalk markings from the standard, which is those two lines, to high visibility, which most look like piano keys in many locations. And then occasionally we'll find a potential crosswalk location that we can pave a little island that we could eventually upgrade to with concrete at some point in the future. So in Fairfax County, many of our streets were built with much wider than needed travel lanes or too many travel lanes. And the result of that is we have road safety issues such as speeding and inattentive driving. Repaving provides an opportunity to right size the travel lanes and the roads and also provide new bike lanes and turn lanes to improve safety for everyone. Typically, we don't adjust the traffic capacity at signals. We will usually maintain legal street parking, although we've got some options for you all to consider tonight. And then, of course, we have we have a countywide bicycle master plan, and this is a really important tool to help us add new bike lanes to meet the intent of that plan. So here's an example of a road that VDOT repaved a few years ago, and that we are able to add bike lanes to as a result of our collaboration. So before it was 2 parking lanes and 2 wide travel lanes. And afterwards, we narrowed the travel lanes to the minimum width, and as a result, we found that speeding and those kind of things decreased. So there are a couple different kinds of bicycle facilities you'll see in Fairfax County. You'll see sharrows; those are just shared lane markings. Those are less commonly used now. Most commonly, we provide standard bike lanes. So in this case, it's a bike lane next to a row of parked cars or a bike lane next to a curb. And we're trying to get more buffered bike lanes. In our future projects, as well as some that we proposed to you tonight. So there's a bike lane and there's a nice space for between you and the travel lane. So primarily the types of bike lanes that we'll show to you tonight are for the types of cyclists who are strong and fearless, who will ride in any condition, and those who are enthused and confident. We do try where possible to create the space that we could eventually upgrade some of these buffered bike lanes to protected bike lanes and try to attract some of those interested but concerned riders in the future. So while bike lanes, obviously for people biking provide a benefit, in terms of comfort and safety, they also have other benefits to people who don't ride a bike. So for example, we're able to reduce the crossing distance for people crossing the street. They provide a buffer, so if you're walking along a sidewalk, there's pedestrians using the sidewalk have the traffic is moved out towards the side of the road, and you have a space that in between instead of just having cars drive along the curb. They also reduce speeding and lower noise levels throughout neighborhoods. They improve visibility also at driveways or side streets as well, because it does shift the traffic from kind of the edges of the road towards the center. And so the first bike lane project we proposed is over in Franconia District on Oakwood Road. And it's only in the westbound direction between Van Dorn Street and Crown Royal Street. Right now, there are 2 wide travel lanes in that westbound direction and no bike lane. And what we propose to do is add a westbound bike lane by repurposing one of those travel lanes. We find that Oakwood Road is in this direction. It doesn't have a lot of traffic, and therefore we could do this without impacting that, without impacting traffic. And this bike lane will provide a useful route to connect to the bike lanes on Crown Royal Drive, this street right here, as well as there's a new side path along Van Dorn Street, and that runs up towards the Van Dorn Street Metro in Alexandria. Also in Franconia District, and not very far from Oakwood Road, are 2 proposed crosswalks. The first one here is at Crown Royal Drive and Founders Hill Drive. So we're talking about the bike lane on Oakwood right here, and then this is the crosswalk just down here. It's a nice way for folks to cross the street. Their homes on both sides, and as well as there's also a bus stop on either side. So it provides a way for bus riders to get from one side to the other. And then just north of that, over at Crown Royal Drive and Terrapin Place, there's a little private trail right here, as well as one of the apartment offices. And so we thought it'd be useful to have a little crosswalk to connect between those 2 spaces. Since the Crown Royal Drive already has bike lanes, no parking is needed to be repurposed to install these. And that's the wrap for Franconia District. For Mount Vernon District, we have 2 proposed bike lanes and some crosswalks in 2 locations. One is Laurel Crest Drive, and the other is Old Mount Vernon Road. So between Laurel Crest Drive runs between Silverbrook Road and Douglas Fir Drive, and right now there are between 2 and 4 wide travel lanes, between 0, 1, or 2 parking lanes, and there's no on-street bicycle facilities. We have per our countywide master plan, we propose to add bike lanes by narrowing the travel lanes where feasible and repurposing some underused parking lanes. This provides a useful connection between the elementary school, Laurel Hill Elementary School, as well as the Cross County Trail. The example photo here is over on nearby Armistead Drive, where it used to have 4 travel lanes, 2 in each direction, and we simply removed 2 of them, added this center turn lane, and we added bike lanes. And again, as I mentioned earlier, we would try to add a buffer to the bike lane wherever space allows. And so there's we observed that the street parking is kind of heavily used in this blue section over here in front of these townhomes, and also a little bit heavily used over here over near the single family homes. But for the rest of the street, it wasn't that well used. So we developed a few different options for you to rank in the online survey. The first option is to do nothing at all. It's always an option for whenever we repave a street, as Huda mentioned. The other option is to remove all street parking. And then the option I have shown here is to repurpose street parking all along this part, essentially all along here, but keep this section in blue where we observed that it was heavily used. We also observed the school drop-off, and we did notice that there was a little bit of a backup along here when people are waiting to turn right into the elementary school. It was a very, very minor. There were not many people that traveled past that to get through to the other neighborhoods, and so we figured if folks are concerned about that traffic, they would be able to just go down here and go down along the street right here, and come up and enter the neighborhood that way instead of going past the school. And whatnot. So it's a very short period of time. And then, so one of the interesting things about, unusual things about Laurel Crest Drive is they actually have two different types of parking signs. And so the parking sign here on the left, this one here is VDOT's official sign. In fact, you'll often find a sticker on it on the back. There might even be a warning saying, "Do not remove by penalty of law." And then there's another sign over here that says no parking on school days except by permit district XX. And what we're proposing is, depending on the option that community selects and what priorities people select, we're proposing to remove these along Laurel Crest Drive. Essentially, they were installed by a developer who built Laurel Hill and Laurel Crest and many of the homes in the neighborhood. They weren't ever made official because when the street was turned over to VDOT and public ownership, they weren't able to be entered into the parking district restrictions because they didn't go through that public process. And they're also just observing the use of parking on Laurel Crest Drive. In order to qualify for those, it's unlikely that street would, because there was a lot of parking wasn't heavily used throughout the street. It was only heavily used in a few sections. In addition to a bike lane, the bike lanes, we're also proposing a new crosswalk at the corner of Laurel Crest Drive and Douglas Fir Drive. It connects a nearby bus stop right over here, and it would have about 3 spaces on the northbound side of the street, and then 5 spaces on the southbound side of the street would need to be repurposed to do that. So that's it for Laurel Crest Drive. Now we're going to move on to Old Mount Vernon Road. Old Mount Vernon Road is over near Route 1, near the adjacent to the Mount Vernon High School, the Riverside Elementary School, and it runs between Drew's Court all the way up here, all the way down to Maryland Street down here. And so right now, if you go down there today, there are 2 very wide travel lanes, and depending on which side of the street you're on, there's between no parking on the street to 1 parking lane or 2 parking lanes, 1 on both sides, and of course there are no bicycle facilities. What we're proposing to do is we're proposing to add bike lanes or buffered bike lanes. Most of the street parking would be maintained. It'll provide a safer route for kids to ride to and from school. And the narrower lanes would reduce speeding. This is an example over on Parker's Lane, also in the Mount Vernon district. One of the things that we looked at when we were out there is that some of the existing crosswalks wouldn't meet the current requirements for safety. So we want to make sure that people using the crosswalk are visible to drivers, as well as crosswalk users can see oncoming traffic. So what we're proposing to do is repurpose 8 parking spaces near the intersection of Maryland Street. So this photo right here, as well as on the northbound side near the George Washington Rec Center entrance. Right here, and we are hoping to upgrade these 2 bar pair crosswalks into the piano style high visibility crosswalk like this one. In addition, we have something a little bit unusual. We measured the turn volumes that use the existing right turn only lanes along Old Mount Vernon Road, that go into Old Mount Vernon Court up here, Betcher Road down here, and Maryland Street. When we found that they didn't meet VDOT's current warrants, in this case, it leads to a dead end street. And then in general, these are generally pretty low volume neighborhood streets. So we're proposing to remove them to provide a more continuous bike lane and reduce crossing distance for people walking. So here's an example of Maryland Street. where we have a very wide crossing distance, right turn only lane here. And we propose to remove that so that we can reduce the crossing distance and so that the kids can only have to cross 1 lane or 2 lanes of traffic instead of 3. And then there's Bexter Street, again, fairly low volume turn into the street. And then similarly, the right turn only down to Old Mount Vernon Court, it would allow us to extend the bike lane a little bit further up the street than we otherwise would. So as Huda mentioned earlier, we have if you have any paving related comments, so drainage issues, missing signage, signal repair, walkway repair, or site distance issues due to vegetation growth, especially as we get into spring and summer here, please submit them to the MyVDOT portal. If you'd like to request road repairs, you can select I need a road repaired link in that portal, or call 1-800-367-7623. We also have the project webpage here. We'll have a survey, and we're accepting. Those are going to be due in about 2 weeks on April 22nd. We welcome any and all feedback. This will be collected and provided to each supervisor to make a decision as to how to proceed. And here are the 2 links to the feedback forms. The first one here is for Franconia District. There's a link right here. And then there's also, if you'd like to leave a voicemail, you can call this number right here, and you can enter this project code, and you can leave a voicemail for us. Same thing for Mount Vernon District. In addition, you can also send me, if you'd like to send me a letter or any kind of postcard or any kind of written feedback via the mail, you can do so at this address here. But again, comments are due by April 22nd. And I will just emphasize we have a slightly different way of doing public accepting input this year. So previously we just had you guys and people send us an email. This year we have an online form that you can rank your choices. So if you have your first priority choice, your second priority choice, or your third priority choice for some of our questions, and then the other option we give you is to just answer a yes or no question. At the bottom of each of those surveys, there's also a free form text box that you can provide any additional feedback, suggest changes, or ask a question. If you do wish to ask us a question, please be sure to leave your contact information so we can send you an answer. And again, tonight, I know Zoom or Teams is not always the easiest software to use. And so if you do not get a chance to ask your question, or if you think of a question that later, you can always ask it via the public input link, or leave a recorded message at the phone number on the page. With that being said, we'll move into the question and answer portion of our meeting.
Thank you, Zach.
Yep, go ahead.
If you would like to ask a question, please raise your virtual hand, which is located at the top of your screen, and I will enable your microphone and call on you to ask a question. You will still need to unmute yourself on your end when your name is called and ask your question or provide a comment, and then please mute yourself after you have asked your question again. If you're on the phone, please press *5 to raise your hand, and when you're called upon by your phone number, press *6 to unmute, and after you finish, please press *6 again to mute yourself. And attendees, please be patient as our callers are listening to their system instructions to their phone to participate. Please note that we will not take any questions via chat tonight. And I see a couple hands up. So let's start with Chuck. I have unmuted your microphone. If you would like to unmute and ask your question. And you can unmute by clicking the microphone symbol at the top of your screen. All right, if this doesn't work, let me make you, let's shift the settings here for a second.
Okay, there we go.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Yeah, first of all, yeah, thanks for all the information. I wasn't expecting all that information at the beginning, but just a quick question. I probably know the answer, but the funds for the paving and restriping and the bike lanes, I'm sure you guys did your research. some of the parking, I mean, I feel like a lot of time, I'm talking about Laurel Crest here. I almost feel like nothing's really broken except for the fact that the cars fly down that road because there's a big, huge dip in the road around, it's around the middle. But if you ever drive down there, it from Silverbrook, it descends down. The elevation will descend down to a point where Laurel Crest meets the Cross County Parkway, and then it'll elevate back up pretty steeply towards the school. But the cars fly. I swear to God, they got to be going over 50 sometimes. It's crazy. And maybe this goes to what you said. If you do install bike lanes, if there's any cars there making the road narrower, maybe they'll slow down a little bit. But I feel like if you do put a crosswalk there, maybe some speed bumps, or even if you don't put a crosswalk on that street, some speed bumps would be really welcome. I mean, I'm actually afraid to walk along the sidewalk there because they fly. I mean, if they miss that curve, I mean, they're gonna, yeah. So I was wondering whether that's possible. If not, how do we get something started to perhaps get a speed bump or a series of speed bumps put on the road there on Laurel Crest?
Thank you for your question. So we do hope that by striping, if that's the option that folks select, that the narrower lanes will encourage people to drive slower. We found that in other cases. There is another program, not part of the repaving program, called the Residential Traffic Calming Program. And if you look on our website, you can figure out, you can contact that team and ask them for speed humps and ask them to evaluate for other traffic calming measures. It isn't part of the current repaving program, though.
Great. We have another question. Let me call on Leigh Marino.
Yes, hello, good evening. Thank you again for this meeting, very informative. I have a couple of questions related to the Oakwood Crown Royal Drive project. My first question is, will the existing striping that was there before the paving work began remain? Will that continue? That's my first question. And then in addition to the crosswalk improvements that you're suggesting, which I think is a great idea, will the curbs need to be modified for accessibility at those crossing points? Thank you.
Well, thanks for your questions. And so the first to answer your first question about the existing markings remaining. So on Crown Royal Drive, yes. What's there will essentially go back exactly as is. And then in terms of updating the ADA ramps, yes, if the ramps are determined to not meet the ADA standard, they would have to be updated to the ADA standard during this process.
Thank you, Zach. We have an additional question from Vicky Gogo. Should be able to unmute yourself.
Yes, thank you. Good evening. Thank you for this information. I am also asking a question about Douglas Fir and Laurel Crest project. And following on really to what Chuck also mentioned as far as the speed issues, we actually have had an accident of someone going just incredibly too fast and hit a parked car that moved several cars in that process. And one was a huge kind of SUV size of a Hummer. She was going that fast down that hill. My question, though, in relation to that is why there was no consideration to do all of Laurel Crest with the bike lanes or lane shifting, because it looks like you're stopping again at Douglas Fir. There's quite a bit more of Laurel Crest. I'm just curious why there was no consideration of incorporating that into the project as well. Thank you.
I'm going to give that one to Huda, I think, since that's the extent of the paving area. So, but
Yes, well, thank you. And thank you, Zach. Thank you for your question. So basically, yes, that's the limits we are paving this year. And the reason is the southern section between, I think it's after Douglas Fir all the way to Silverbrook. That section was recently accepted into our system and in 2017. So the pavement is relatively new and it's not due for pavement because the ratings was found to be higher. We, at some point after speaking with the supervisor, considered looking into the possibility of repaving it with the purpose to extend the bike lanes. However, we also found out that there are parking issues. The parking is in high demand in this area. And based on traffic engineering recommendation and what they know from interaction with the community, it was recommended against it. However, of course, I'll leave that up to the supervisor and the county. If they want to pursue it further, we can review it again. But that's mainly the reason why we're not paving this section. Thank you.
Peyton Smith would like to add to the answer. Go ahead, Peyton.
Well, I just wanted to follow up with one of the previous comments about the possibility of speed humps and let everybody know that if you are interested in traffic calming for Laurel Crest or any other street in the Mount Vernon district, you can reach out to our office and I will provide you all the information on the program, walk you through it, and we can definitely get started on that. It's long been known that that is a road of high concern. So,
thank you, Peyton. All right, we have another question from Dale Rumberger. I enable to your microphone if you can unmute yourselves. I'm going to try changing your setting. Try again, please.
Thank you very much. I think it works now. Thank you. Excellent presentations, both VDOT and FCDOT. I was an initial skeptic on South Run Road of the restriping, taking out a lane for bike lanes. I believe it actually has slowed the speed limit. I think it has had a traffic calming. So from a skeptic to somebody who now believes in that, I think I'll add myself in that category. However, when I go on the interactive site, will I see whether or not the restriping will happen this year because it's beginning to fade for those lanes, number one, and number two, the on-street parking has become, with a lot of service vehicles and trucks that are parking there and trailers, such that the bike lane is no longer, just that safe because they're having to swerve out into the road again instead of having their safe bike lane that was there before. And so I think we probably need to do something to review the amount of on-street parking there if we could, however that is. And I just appreciate your presentation tonight.
Thank you.
We have another question from Vicky Gogo. Let me allow your microphone. Go ahead, Vicky.
Yeah, sorry, I wanted to follow up and couldn't to the responses that were there. The first one, I think someone had mentioned, I don't remember, perhaps it was Ms. Huda. I believe you said we can petition with the supervisor about asking about extending the project all the way from the part of Douglas Fir to Silverbrook. I guess you call it the southern part.
Correct, because
okay.
And I assume you're inquiring about extending also the bike lanes or just the pavement?
Correct.
Yes. That
or whichever option is chosen within the poll. Yes, ma'am.
Of course, yeah. So removing parking would require the supervisor approval.
Okay.
So yeah, that's the reason why it has to go to the supervisor office.
And if I may, with Peyton, I believe you mentioned it's a road of high concern, known to be a road of high concern. My question then is, with the example that you presented at the beginning of the presentation showing addressing the speeding and the driving issues that were there, I'm curious as to why then it's not being addressed on this road when we know it's a road of high concern.
That's for the extent of the paving.
Yeah, just being, if the other was a paving project, I'm just curious how this one would not fall within that as well. Although I do understand as far as what has been turned over from the developer to the county and the state at that point. I'm very aware of that and the timeline there, but just curious if the other example that you presented early in the presentation, and not you specifically, but the team here, that addressed and seemed to eliminate the aggressive driving.
Was it this example?
One. Yep.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, the challenge is to extend the bike lanes in that the area, where the paving is proposed to end, we'd have to repurpose all the street parking there. And sometimes that's very popular that, people don't want to give up their street parking, and sometimes people do want to give it up, so that people don't park there. And so at least at the moment, it's not currently part of the project. But if you feel otherwise, and you're certainly welcome to write that. We have an open-ended form or open-ended box that you can fill that information in our feedback form, and let us know that that's how you feel. And we'll certainly take that into account.
Right, we have another question from Jeff Goger.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. I had two questions. The first was, I was really glad to see bike lanes near Mount Vernon High School. And so I was wondering, in addition to looking at the bicycle master plan, do you also get feedback from this Safe Streets, Safe Routes to School coordinator on bike lanes near schools?
Yes, we did actually. We met with them recently.
That's good.
Yeah, they were supportive. That's
that's
what you're asking.
These kids really need a bike lane. There's a lot of kids you can see biking on that road. My other question was, do you know what the status is? This is from late last year, I guess, the Fort Hunt bike lanes.
So the challenge with that project is it required more work than we could have done during that paving cycle. And so we have to invest a little bit more money and a little bit more time and effort to get that into the across the finish line, I think is the simple answer. But yeah, it's a little bit more complicated than we thought, unfortunately. So it's going to take a little bit longer.
Will it happen this year, do you think?
And I think it's kind of hard to say. I wish.
Hey Jeff, I'll text you and we can call about that, and I'm happy to explain it and walk you through the timeline of that. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry. I know it's off topic.
Yep, no, appreciate your interest though. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question comes from Al. Are you able to unmute yourself, Al? Your setting.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate
Okay.
it. Again, also appreciate the information and the presentations and everyone taking the time to do this. I wanted to follow up from Vicki, some of her questions and then some of the responses with regard to Douglas fir. There were two things that were said. I just wanted to kind of sort of correct those if you guys would take another look. So the new paving that you're talking about does not begin at Douglas fir. It's actually further up and it's closer to Gilroy. So there is a patch where the new paving kind of goes from closer to Gilroy toward Silverbrook. That is newer. But to end the new paving and then the bike lane, stop the bike lane installation at Douglas fir would not be accurate based on the current paving situation. And then the second point was that I think there was supervisor indication that the parking was desired in that piece past Douglas fir over towards Silverbrook or towards Gilroy. Our community has been very, very vocal about removing that parking for basically going back to 2017. So that in fact is not true. Our desire would be to eliminate that parking. We're on the record with that for numerous years. So if we're able to submit that and petition to have bike lanes installed the whole way to Silverbrook, I think that would benefit the community as far as use of the trails inside the community, and for the best purposes of people on bikes to have them be able to access into the community from Silverbrook, because it doesn't make any logical sense to end bike lanes at Douglas Fir, because then you're going to have a traffic pattern with people on bikes trying to navigate parked cars. And again, the high rate of speeds that have already been noted, along with the parked cars and bicycles, I think that's kind of a disaster if that were to occur.
Thank you for your question. I should so when I say I should have been a little bit more clear about where it ends at Douglas Fir. So I had my cursor here. So it'll go just past Douglas Fir, as you noted, right to where essentially the hill, kind of at the top of the hill, and the pavement becomes much nicer quality. So it goes, you're right, it does go a little bit past that. And so we're proposing to have the bike lane go a little past Douglas Fir, up the hill, and then at the current plan is to end it. But again, is if you feel otherwise, please feel free to put it in the comments, and we'll definitely look up, and I'll connect with Peyton to make sure that you've got your previous statements that you all have made on record about that as well. So thank you.
All right, the next question comes from Leigh Marino.
Yes, good evening. Thanks. Back to the Crown Royal Drive, a couple of follow-up questions. One, since the plan, as you noted earlier, confirmed earlier, is to retain the existing striping, which has the bike lanes throughout that entire length of the road. I've lived here for several years in the Sycamores community, and I've observed that sometimes people still take it for a parking space because of it, of the maybe lack of signage or markings on the actual asphalt or pavements. So just, and I'll put this in written comments that I plan to submit, but just for tonight, I'd like to just make note that if there's ways to make those bike lanes as visible and obvious as possible that they are indeed bike lanes and not parking, I think that would go a long way, recognizing that there are some smaller designated parking areas in different sections of Crown Royal, and I think that's why people think that the whole length of the road might be for parking. So that's just a comment for your consideration. And then my other question is, with the Oakwood signal and the improvements there to add the bike lane so that there's more flow through on the bike lane, again, I think that's a great idea. Question is, though, when I looked at the interactive map for paving, I noticed there's actually there's some red markings of a future project for the Van Dorn interchange, and then south of Van Dorn, just south of the Oakwood signal, but there's a gap between the interchange signal and Crown Royal that is just blank. It's not green, blue, or red, or it's just nothing. So I was just, even though I know it's adjacent and not directly related to the project, because of its location, I'm curious if anyone can comment on why, if there's plans to repave that section.
Do you know off the top of your head whether that pavement was like newish or was it older looking?
Well, I think it's newish. However, because of the high volume of traffic that interchange gets, there's still quite often lots of issues at the signal itself with potholes and pockmarks in the road and so on. So it could probably use a review. Anyway, thank you for considering my comments. Oh, and one last question on the comment. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to ask, I noticed the comments are due on the 22nd. What is the comment period review typically? And will there be a notification of answers to the comments submitted by the public?
So if you leave your email or any other way to contact you, I can let you know and when you submit your comments. I mean, obviously people don't. I mean, you know, they won't hear about. But we do have to turn it around pretty quick. It is paving season. The VDOT has given their contractors the okay to go in a lot of places.
Okay.
And of course, we want them to get all the streets. And so we expect a decision pretty quickly.
Okay,
At
great.
least on this one. So.
Thank you. I think we have one more question from Chuck. Are you able to unmute, Chuck? Recently. Try again.
Thank you. Just real quick, going back to the speed bumps. Oh, so by the way, the chat is disabled, so I can't type anything in there. It doesn't get posted. Just about the speed bumps, I was wondering, could you post a link in the comments or somewhere, or put it on, like, how we can get that process started?
Yeah, I was trying to. It's blocked for me as well. Can I give you my cell phone and you can text me and I'll send it to you that way? Does that work?
Perfect.
Yep.
Yes.
So my cell phone is 571-363-9782. 571-363-9782. I'll send that to you right away.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Any other questions? None. This concludes the question and answer session for today. As a reminder, feedback can be submitted until April 22nd, 2024 using the following channels. Submit a survey at https://publicinput.com/r7568 for Franconia District and https://publicinput.com/j1508 for Mount Vernon District. Or leave recorded comments at 703-890-5898 and use project code 6079 for Franconia District and project code 7004 for Mount Vernon District. Or mail written comments to FCDOT to the attention of Zachary Desjardins, Active Transportation Section, 4050 Legato Road, Suite 400, 22033 Fairfax, Virginia. For more information on the repaving program or to visit or review the proposed striping projects for your district, visit the project webpage at https://www.fairfaxcounty.gov/transportation/paving-and-restriping-program. This concludes our meeting on the 2024 repaving program. A recording of the meeting will be available on the project webpage in the next day or so. Thank you for joining us tonight. We are really appreciating your time and participation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.